Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Liberation Podcast. Today we will be discussing, analyzing, and reviewing Margo's Got Money Troubles by Rufi Thorpe. I didn't look up how to say her last name. I'm sorry. We are currently raising money for Code Pink for Cuba. So the link for that will be in our description. For more content outside of the podcast, please check out our Instagram and TikTok at Literary Liberation and Twitter at LitLib Podcast. I'm your co-host, Mariah, and you can find me at Hungry Right on all social media platforms.
And I'm your co-host, Kristen. You can find me at TensTBR on all social media platforms. So we decided to read this week because there is going to be an Apple TV adaptation of this book, specifically with Elle Fanning playing as titular character Margo, and Nick Offerman is playing as her ex-WWE wrestler dad. And I didn't watch the trailer or anything, but I like Nick Offerman's work and I like Elle Fanning's work that I've seen. So I was like, this is probably going to be a pretty decent adaptation. And I feel like Apple, they actively lose money on their streaming platform every year because of how much they put into the arts. And I always think it's great when a corporation is losing money, especially if it's for something as great as the arts.
I don't have Apple TV, so I don't know. I've never watched any of them. I haven't watched any of the Apple TV movies. I have no frame of reference.
Severance is one of my favorite TV shows of all time, and that's an Apple TV show. And then there's something we watched Pluribus, which Pluribus is low-key anti-communist, so which I don't know how that show's gonna work out. So that's not my favorite show, but the quality of the show is very high, at least. So there's that. And I want to say there was another Apple TV show we watched, but I just can't think of it right now.
Is The Pit Apple TV?
No, it's HBO.
No. That was the only other show I can think of that you were watching at the moment. And now, come April 15th, we'll have Margo's Got Money Trouble, which this book just came out not too long ago. It came out June 11th of 2024 and has really gotten a lot of traction. It's about a teen mom who gets pregnant, has to learn how to make enough money to live and support her baby and herself. If you want to keep a little TLDR without having spoilers, you don't want to know too much about it, that's kind of what's going to happen. So this is a standalone as well. I think that's important to acknowledge. It's not a series, so this Apple series should only be one season.
I'd imagine. It depends on how faithful they stay to the book. And the other show that I watched on Apple TV that I adored was Murderbot. That was a really good adaptation as well. So I do have faith that Apple will be pretty faithful to the source material. Because Mariah and I liked this book, I'd say. It wasn't necessarily our favorite book of all time, but we did enjoy it, and we will probably go into depth more of why maybe it's not a perfect book to us in the specifically spoiler zone.
Yeah, and if you don't know who Rufi Thorpe is, she has a Master's of Fine Arts from the University of Virginia in 2009. She's the author of 4 novels. I think The Girls from Corona Del Mar is maybe one of the more popular ones, as well as The Knockout Queen. Personally, I haven't heard of any of these books. I've only heard of Margo's because I've seen it on my TikTok For You page.
Yeah.
So I don't know a whole lot about her, but she's got 2 kids, lives in California, has a husband. I was looking at some interviews with her to kind of feel out what her politics are, because in this book, it's a little confusing because there's moments where I was like, okay, it seems good. And then there's other moments where it's not so good. And she said in an interview where she was talking about this that she didn't have like a moral agenda for this book when she was trying to do research. When she was like, she made her own OnlyFans account so that she could subscribe to other content creators to kind of get a feel for what exactly how the industry is like on that. Because she didn't have any frame of reference, so she would pay them like $50 and send a a message, and she would include that there's no moral agenda, which I think is really weird, especially since she was writing this during the pandemic.
Yeah, why would you
Um,
say moral agenda? That's also often like weird wording to me because like maybe you didn't have any like I'm imagining she didn't mean to like make it to be like a moralizing thing whether or not you're an adult that does create OnlyFan content, right? That's what but obviously we could not know exactly what she means through that. But I think that's just weird wording if she's just trying to say that like if you have an OnlyFans you're okay.
it's really weird. And then I went on her Instagram and I saw she had a post where she said that she had voted, and she said she was thinking about the national abortion bans, and like women getting health care. But then also she said, I think about Trump's refusal to use CIA intelligence and his insistence on using private intelligence that will tell him only what he wants to hear. Um,
What does that even mean?
I could not tell you this. I will have all of this, all the stuff I'm talking about in this is going to be linked. She also did an interview in 2020 for the Corona book, and the lady that was interviewing her was a Zionist, because they were talking about friendships and whatnot, and like how women need to defend themselves and learn like martial arts or whatever. And the interviewer was like, oh yeah, my husband's Israeli and he got me, or was talking about like Krav Maga. And I was like,
Oh,
what the fuck is that? So that was from 2020. I don't know if she's a Zionist, like the author herself, but very, it was very strange for sure. That's all I got though.
well, I mean, from reading this book and finishing Margo, and then what evidence you have presented now, to me, it seems like we're, I won't say dealing with, but like to me, Rufi Thorpe kind of just gives like your run of the mill, like liberal feminist.
Yeah, which
And
we'll
which
get
makes
into
sense. Yeah.
more of it because this book does flush out some things that clarify that. So if you're wondering whether or not you should read it, it has a 3.84 star average with almost 200,000 ratings and 27,000 written reviews. It's pretty highly rated. It's not the highest rated book, but I get the way it's written, the writing style. I thought it was quite enjoyable, the way that
I
it's
agree.
planned and plotted and characterization is done really well. It's just like the underlying politics and like what is motivating the character and kind of what we can take away is where my contentions come with it. Because if it had gone a different direction, I would have easily rated this like close to a 5 star. Like it's not perfect, but I thought for sure it was gonna be like a 4.5 star rating until like the last couple of chapters of this book.
Yeah, I think this is a really bingeable read, and I think if you're somebody, because I think that I don't quote me on this, but I think the Apple TV, it's not being released, like they're not dropping the whole season either. It's like weekly episodes. So I feel like this is a book. I mean, Mariah and I read this pretty quickly too. We read it in less than a week. It's less than 300 pages. It is written where I think Storycraft did not say that it was like fast paced, but I felt personally like it was pretty fast paced for it to be a literary fiction. Like compared to most lit fics, this is a fast paced story, I would argue.
Yeah, it's kind of written like it has some humor and whatnot. It kind of reminded me of the style of writing that was in Convenience Store Woman, I think.
To
Um,
me,
so it's like the vibes are there. Like I would try
yeah,
out one of her other novels, but I'm just not expecting anything out of them
well,
from her
she's no
older
Marxist
stuff.
feminist. That's her name, sure. But to me, it kind of reminded me of Sky Daddy the way it was written. And I read Sky Daddy last year, and I really adored that book a lot more than what I was expecting. And this kind of gave that vibe with being a completely different subject matter and like realm. But I feel like this is like the step before Sky Daddy, because Sky Daddy's a little bit more of those super weird girl lip fics, where I feel like this is kind of like not, I wouldn't say normie girl lip fics, because I do think Margo is a very unique main character and she is a little not your average Joe, but I think it's a lot more accessible for like normies. to get into the strange girl lit fic.
You know what? It kind of goes with the episode. So we're filming. It's during the middle of the day. I have children, and I have the privilege of saying that I was a teen mom. I don't know if I still am a teen. I don't know what quantifies that. Like, I'm no longer a teenager, but I have an almost 12-year-old. So I have a particularly unique framework to bring to this. I also was on OnlyFans during the pandemic. I still earn residuals here and there, but I don't really do it full time anymore. So for a lot of this book, as we're getting into the spoilers, I thought she was just like me, especially once I saw her username. I was like,
yeah.
Is this about me?
This. Is this fucking play about us?
No, literally.
Well, because I remember I was reading it because I was ahead of Mariah for most of the time we were reading this, and I was like, wait till you find out this girl's like online persona's name, because I was like, what the heck? Because even I was like taken aback for a second. I was like, what are the odds of this? Which, no offense,
you think I can sue?
Well, I don't know. When was this published? Because this is
2024.
2024. I thought it was a little.
She started writing it during the pandemic, and I have been Hungry Rye on all social media platforms since like 2019.
The pandemic.
So I came first.
She was inspired by you.
It is weird, but I, unlike Margo, was not groomed by my professor.
Too bad.
Which this book started out, and Chris and I were like, oh my god, this is another My Dark Vanessa.
Yeah.
Like, we've already done, this would be our fourth one, and I'm really glad that this book didn't dwell on that fact too much, because there are so many books that have done this so far that have been very successful. They have really great commentary, and I think it was a good layer to have in here with her and Mark. Another English professor. Why is it always English degrees or English as a subject?
That's what I'm saying. That's what I brought up in Half His Age.
4 for 4. It's very weird. My Dark Vanessa, we have Half His Age. We have The Teacher by Frida McFadden. And now we have Margo's Got Money Trouble. That is not a coincidence. There has to be a reason for it, and I just can't figure it out.
English teachers, y'all need some better PR, because right now the only thing is that people got on you is that you're predators. So
yeah, if I see like a man as an English teacher now, I'm just gonna like
skip that class.
I'm gonna look at you.
Don't take that class, y'all. Yeah. Which I remember I was reading this, and I was even like, I don't even know. At the beginning, I was like, I don't know how much we're gonna get out of this compared to like a typical episode, because I was like, we've already done like Half His Age, just not even a full, I guess, over a month ago now at this point. And we did The Teacher, My Dark Vanessa last year. I'm like, there's not too much new commentary we can bring to that discussion, because we've already talked about everything. We've recommended the nonfiction that we have that's able to reference that. So I was like, I really don't know what else we're going to talk about. But I think this book does a great job at, compared to our last book, instead of demonizing sex work, because we just read Love of Worker Bees by Alexandra Kollontai, which obviously does have like 100-year difference just about, I guess. But it is so interesting to compare like that book to this book specifically.
Yeah, but the whole thing with this is that it's very teetering on this edge where she doesn't overtly say it's like girl boss empowerment, but she does talk about how with doing OnlyFans and how quickly you're able to accumulate funds, right? Because Margo needs money. She's done with school.
Margo's got money troubles.
An NDA. She's got money troubles. So she learns about this website from her dad, who has a wrestling friends or whatever, like ladies that are doing that to earn more money. So she looks into it, starts doing it for herself. And that's the thing with sex work, is the money is instantaneous. You can get money, well, like, I think weekly withdrawals, but she doesn't know exactly how to like pitch herself and whatnot. So a lot of what the framework surrounding the sex work in this is like it's trying to talk about how like mothers are like not supported in society, but it doesn't really get into like the capitalist exploitation and the alienation of women as like the development of like primitive accumulation that like Sylvia Federici and Marx talked about.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of devoid of that. Not that I would expect her to be like, and then actually, and Marx said in this part of
Yeah.
Capital, Volume One, but I thought maybe there was just an inkling that she might go there, and she never does.
Well, one thing that was interesting to me early on, because obviously Margo learns about OnlyFans through her, which this video is probably going to be flagged because we're saying OnlyFans 100 million times. Um, but Margot's father tells her about it because they're watching some WWE. It might not be specifically WWE. Mariah and I are not well versed in any of like the UFC, WWE, any of the fighting stuff. But my partner does watch it, and I do know that there's kind of like a controversy with a lot of the women there because they do end up signing up for these types of websites to make more money because of the fighters in like wrestling and like the UFC specifically are like they're very exploited. First of all, they can only do maybe upwards of 4 fights a year. They pay a lot of money, but they are paying themselves, their team that they have, their gym that they have. They have to fund their own thing themselves. And so a lot of these women end up turning to OF specifically because they make more money doing that versus what they make fighting, which is really interesting the way that exploitation is. And I know there's a lot of criticism for like Dana White, which I think is the owner of the UFC, and like he's very close with Trump and things like that. And there's a lot of like political stuff surrounding like the UFC and WWE that I'm not necessarily completely fully well versed into, but I do think that commentary was there a bit where it probably could have been more beneficial if it did dive into those elements more, because we have Jinx as a main character within the story who was a ex WWE star.
You can tell she's trying to draw that correlation between just like how like athletes can be viewed similarly to sex workers in some respects, or aspects, I guess would be the better term for it. But with the way that like athletes, especially like if you look at like football and whatnot, like yeah, they get paid a lot of money up front, but your body can only withstand so much, which is something that Jinx is also dealing with. Like you get a lot of physical trauma from doing these jobs, even if it's like quote unquote like fake wrestling, because he did like the WWE like John Cena type, but it wasn't official. It was like an indie sort of thing. It's interesting. It's same thing with sex work. Like you as like young women are the desired demographic. You're going to pull up that much money first, and then as you get older, people aren't going to be as inclined. You'd have to build up that fan base, and hopefully people would stay with you. But the difference is like one is more socially acceptable, and the other one is not socially acceptable, which is the dilemma that Margo has started to face in this um, book with one of her friends. We're assuming, or high school friends, they make the page and they dox her, which is
Yes.
a real thing. And I can't imagine having that posted on like Facebook of all places, like where your mom's at or whatever.
Mm.
And she has a very strained relationship with her mother, despite being like raised by her. Um, she doesn't like get her daughter.
Yes. And I think that's one aspect that actually was done relatively poorly throughout this book, that I feel like, I mean, obviously, like, I think having parental issues are pretty normal, especially in a capitalist society, because we know that Margot's mother, Shane, how do you say it? I don't even know. It's like Shane,
Cheyenne.
Cheyenne. That's not how it's spelled, but um, but I think with Cheyenne being like a single mother for a majority of the book, raising Margo and stuff, so that's one of the reasons why like Margo even chooses to like keep her son too, rather than getting an abortion. Which this book is one of the best examples I think we have of like being truly pro-choice. Hold on, I think this book is just a really good example of like being pro-choice and actually being the choice, you know, because like people always like to think that pro-choice means the choice to get an abortion if you so choose, which it does, but it also means the choice in not getting an abortion if you don't want to.
Yeah, but she's also like realizes that she wasn't fully informed on what precisely like pregnancy and having a child like really entailed. And her original reasoning, like she doesn't really have like a concrete one. She's like, I thought it'd make me a good person to do
Yes.
this and to raise my own child, and like giving a child up for adoption is very traumatic for both parties involved. But this was, it was very interesting how it was done, and I remember feeling very similar. Not because like abortion was not something that was on the table. It was either like adoption or like you keep it, and I was like, well, I guess that's what I got to do. um and Margo, despite being what, she's like 18 or 19,
19,
I
I
think,
think.
19 when she's pregnant, and it's a hard
She's
age.
actually
Like, you're
20 when she
so
has the baby
young.
too.
So young.
Yeah.
And she realizes like what happens to your body and how violent the act of like giving birth and whatnot is, which I thought was really lovely. It was such a nice aspect to have in this, was just like the way that teen pregnancy was depicted in this
Mm-hmm.
related to me. I know it's not everyone's experience, but it was
Well,
pretty
I
spot
mean,
on.
which is interesting though, because like teen pregnancy in like the early 2000s and the 90s was so much, I don't want to say like normalized, but you had like those shows that were like Teen Mom, 16 and Pregnant. And I know that like the teen mother birth rates have gone down like significantly within the last couple of years, which I imagine is more too because of better and comprehensive sex education that is happening. But obviously it still is a, I mean, problem, I guess. I don't know a better term for that. But it's really interesting to me too, because like even though Margo is a teen mom, she's over 18 too. But then so she doesn't get, so she's treated differently too from society versus like a 16-year-old teen mom or a 15-year-old teen mom too. But she still doesn't have that same support, which I think is touched on in this book. But again, I think that's one of Rufi Thorpe's biggest downfalls, is that she doesn't, there's not enough criticism of like society in that way.
It's very like she'll make passing mentions like, oh, I get it, like there's just like not enough. And then she's kind of, the main character just figures things out. Like she really isn't affected too severely by the things that are happening. And having money troubles when you have a kid is really fucking scary, especially when you live on your own. And like, I don't feel like she wasn't, like she always just like figured it out and it was fine. And I kind of felt frustrated, especially living in California. Everything's so fucking expensive. And the way that
Yeah.
she had two roommates, Big Cat and Little Cat or whatever, and
Mm.
they were just like shitty. Susie was the real one.
Susie was
I
the
like
goat.
Susie. I love her. Because it does make sense, like the way like they're all like that age, they don't want to be around kids, they want to party, they want to be able to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Totally get it. But Margo's obviously struggling. She
Yeah.
pays rent, you know, like it's not, I
I
don't
mean,
know,
I
I
think
just,
one of the things that was, I think, accurate in this book, not that, again, I am not a parent in any way, shape, or form. I have two cats. That is like the most parenting I'll do. But I think one thing that is, I do know this from like, I have friends who have children besides just Mariah, believe it or not, because I'm at that age where a lot of adults have kids, and even like adults are like my age and a little bit older than me and a little bit younger than me. Once you have a kid, it is a very isolating experience because you just can't go do whatever the hell you want anymore. And that's one thing that I love, is doing whatever the hell I want. If I want to go to the movies right now, I could go to the movies right now. Nothing to playing around that, you know?
yeah. And Margot learns that really quickly with her old job, right? She thought her
Mm-hmm.
boss, while she was waiting as a waitress, I
Tables.
should say, not
Yeah.
just like she was a waitress. She actually liked her and was gonna help and like be flexible. And I know a lot of like waitresses or moms. There's a lot of people who are working in industries like that. Working in caregiving is another really big
Mm-hmm.
example where what do you do when you don't
If the
have
child's not old
like you
enough
don't have
to go to
child,
school,
you have a baby, you'll get in trouble. Usually people,
yeah.
it doesn't matter like how shitty your coworker is, your attendance is more valuable because you need bodies on site
Mm-hmm.
to like write it off. I think a lot of workplaces care more about that. And Margo obviously like she's a good worker, but she just can't find childcare, and childcare is so expensive. Kristen is a nanny, so Kristen knows like firsthand like how
Yeah.
much you get paid for it, and like the normal like worker, like minimum wage worker or tip worker, is not going to be able to afford that.
No, and I think also like another thing too is just like the way that daycare functions and stuff. That was one issue that Margot had early on too, where she was trying to sign up Bodhi for daycare, but they were like, "Oh, sorry, we have a 6 month wait list," and she's like, "So I should have done this while I was pregnant," and they're like, "Yeah, most people do put their kid on a wait list before, like while they're pregnant," which is just so incredibly unrealistic because you won't know what kind of care that you're looking for your child until your child's even actually here either, which I understand that's actually like a realistic aspect though, to put your kid on a wait list for a daycare, but that because of capitalism is why that is. There should be enough childcare for every child that needs it, you know, affordable
The
childcare
Soviets,
too.
the Soviets were really cooking with the free
Preach.
childcare, free
Yeah.
daycare, when they did have it, and even like when we had like I don't know what that was. They had so much more, and in every other country, they have something. And despite like all these other countries living under like a capitalist society, like still have more social safety nets than in the United States. Like the U.S. is one of what 4 countries that doesn't have like mandatory paid maternity
Maternity
or
leave.
paternity parental leave in general. And I like you kind of get the idea that that's relevant in here, but I don't. I feel like the author was trying really hard to be like a girl boss about this because Margo comes up with this idea. It was like, how are we going to get people to follow us? And she's like, oh, we're going to post on TikTok and we're going to make these like skits or whatever, which is what like everyone did during the pandemic. That's how people
Yeah.
were like Hawk Hates You for one was like another one, right? Probably had it. I don't know when Hawk initially started or these other like OF content creators. But I think most people started around the same time. It was like 2019 or 2020, and then there's
I
no
mean,
discoverability on
okay.
OnlyFans. It's really difficult. And I remember going into different like there's like Discord servers you could get involved in.
I know on like Twitter and stuff too, you can there's different I wouldn't say forums on Twitter, but you can like make like an account and post on Twitter like using certain hashtags, and you will find other creators and stuff that'll kind of like retweet your post or like your post to give you more visibility as well.
So you got Margo, right? She's coming up with this. She's like, I'm gonna work with these other 2 girls or whatever.
Mhm.
And then she's earning all this money and then she's getting served papers from baby daddy. And it's like, I want
That
full
custody.
parental rights
Full
for this
custody
child because you're incapable of taking care of it despite like not
because
being involved.
yeah, despite having her being bullied into signing an NDA and basically a settlement to not expose him for being a groomer and a predator, you know? Because, like, that is what he is. He was her teacher. He was 37 years old while she was 19 years old and faced virtually no repercussions for his actions until his wife ended up finding out that he was unfaithful, which we never get a resolution from that aspect really either, because basically whenever we last see like Mark at the end of the book, he's like the divorce isn't finalized, so he still obviously has some semblance of an idea that he's still gonna be with his wife, I guess.
Good luck, dude. which is like typical. Like men don't
Yeah.
typically have to pay child support. They don't usually have to do a lot, despite what like the dude bros, like the men's rights
Baby
MRA. Is that what it's
trapping.
called? They're like they're It's just not true. It's not
No.
true. I don't know what to tell you. I don't even have the
Which
stats
is
off the top of my head, but it's just objectively
that's
not
what I'm
true.
like that's what I'm saying, like with men like that like to complain that like women are just like evil baby trappers and stuff. But like how often single dads, it obviously does exist. Mariah and I are not saying that doesn't exist. But you can see the statistics that single parents are majority the mothers, right? And you can say that's because of whatever have you, but systematically I think it's because they know that women are easier exploitable for that labor of being a mother, you know. There's that one book that I was thinking about that you recommend all the time. Is it The Second Shift? Is that the name of the book?
Yes, that is
That
it.
is like relevant to this book as well. Like to look at, I wouldn't
By
say it's
Arlie
like men.
Hochschild, I think is the author. Sorry, I was looking back. I was like, what is the author's name? It's an older book too. It just got a newer edition. He's
Oh.
from the 80s originally.
But that's like one thing too, where like you always see like the meme on Twitter too, where it's like women fought. Why would women fight for the right to work? Blah blah blah. Where it's like women were more fighting for the right to be compensated for the labor they were already doing domestically at home, right? I think even Angela Davis does talk about it a bit in Women, Race, and Class. But obviously, whenever she's discussing it too, it's how mostly the white women were fighting for their own benefit and not through a solidarity and intersectionality of what we should be doing with all women or femme presenting people. You know, like we're a unit and we need to be working together. And I don't think with Margot's finale in this book, she is a real woman. I don't know what you would say. She's not an ally.
I see, like, this is like the biggest thing. And I know, like, we're only like 34 minutes in, but like, we get the trial and whatnot, and how she's being slandered, just like general whorephobia. Like, it's not anything new to me. I've
Yeah.
read like Revolting Prostitutes. That's another book you should probably read. But this, like, the end of this book really just reminded me of a nonfiction book I just finished recently called Enemy Feminisms that you
Mm-hmm.
should probably check out. It kind of gets into like why the whole girl boss thing is not going to yield any sort of liberation, which I just found this book so interesting because it's all centered around like exploitation of women and mothers,
Yes.
and just how absolutely insidious it is, and like the double standards and whatnot, because Margo can't understand like why it's okay to have sex, but then as soon as you take a picture of your body or your breasts or whatever and post it online, it becomes a problem. But then in the
And
end she's like,
well,
I think I'm gonna become a pimp.
yeah, at the like even all throughout the book she like complains about like OnlyFans, like the cut that they take, like it's like 30% or something ridiculous, and she criticizes that all throughout the book. But then she's putting herself in that same situation as like the OnlyFans company does, and she views that as negative, but then her doing it is okay. And that's like inherently the problem with liberal feminists and like liberal capitalists, you know? If you're gonna sit here and like think that we need this new wave of feminism, but then just be like, well, but it's okay because under capitalism, I have the chance to exploit someone too.
It
And
just doesn't make any sense because she's got her two other people that she's working with making content. She learns that, I think it was it Rose that was on the journey to becoming a physicist and needed
yes,
money, and some people in her department while she was working on her doctorate found out that she had an OnlyFans account, and they were like, "This is against the institution of academia to have this represented." Da, 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 da. Anyways, like obviously there's something fucking going on, and like she is able to see that like this is bad, like that's horrible that society treats you that way. So my solution is I'm going to step on your neck and take 10% of your profits to enrich myself and help you earn money.
help
And I
you
was just
find
like,
more
why couldn't it
fans.
be like a workers collective or something? Why couldn't you
Yeah,
form a union? That would have been fucking sweet. I would have loved to see that. Some sort of like unionizing, collaborative worker co-op. Like, I get it. Like, sex work is not empowering. Like, I am not a liberal feminist, but we also can't act like becoming a cog in the machine, like if you can't beat them, join them, is the
Yeah.
solution to these problems. It's not, and it never will be.
No, and I think that's one thing that, like, the ending of this book is so incredibly frustrating because, like, you spend this book like watching Margo struggle. I mean, I like Jinx's character as well. I thought he was a really interesting character to discuss, like, how like addiction can affect someone's life in so many different ways, how being an addict and stuff can have such a negative impact because of like um Jinx being an addict is why like Margo is affected with like why she might lose her son because she's living with someone that's doing this specific treatment that is shown to help addicts and people that are addicted to like pain pills and stuff not become addicted to pain pills again. But then the way that the government treats it is still demonizing it, right? And so she has to lose that connection with her father and forcing her father to move out. And like those aspects are there, but then you just have this weird like liberal feminist stuff where it's like, oh well, what can you do? Rather than having a
It was so
truly
strange because she's like, and I get like at some point they would have to, I don't know, get either a bigger place or do something else, but it just felt so, I don't know, carceral in a way. Like, we're assessing the carceral system, like, of nature of like CPS and them removing children despite it, like, the child's fine, the child's
yeah.
okay. There are parents that do methadone, but like, if you're getting the help, we shouldn't be taking
We shouldn't
children out of
demonize that.
situations um if we're able to uplift and help them. Like, that's like kind of the element of transformative justice that we're trying to
Mm-hmm.
avoid. Like, people do need to get help, but I just had like the whole book is centered around like maintaining family ties and like what is best for your child, right? And
Mm-hmm.
exploring that, and I just don't feel that some of the conclusions the author comes to were great.
And
I don't know,
that's the
especially with
problem
like
when you don't read.
JB. Is
Yes.
he a senator? Is he, but then we realize he works in machine learning. So I was like, oh, so he works in artificial
AI.
intelligence,
Yeah, that's what
AI.
I got too.
Um, okay. And he's like, we'll come up with like this whole thing and make you
This algorithm that analyzes people's followers and then exploits it. So it's like you're recreating meta. Like that's what you're doing. You know, and I don't know. I don't like I think JB, I think his character especially was not well fleshed out in a lot of ways too. I thought he was kind of a poorly written character and kind of only shown up whenever it was convenient, which I think that's one thing that's incredibly frustrating about this book is his like the ending is as the way the ending is that's so incredibly unsatisfying because there's no like further repercussions. Like it's just like everything wraps up in a nice little bow and everything's perfect. You know, like Bodhi ends up meeting his father and she's like, I'm allowing them to have a good relationship, which is great if you're able to like look past, I don't know, the abuse that he caused to Margo and different aspects like that. It's just really weird how they're just like, oh, well, my dad has to move, but at least he's renting a really nice house now. Or, and then like her best friend, she's like, and then I'm just going to pay her to be a full time nanny. Like, it's just so like perfectly ending. It feels really cheap.
It did feel really cheap. I didn't like how, well, like Mark, his family, they're really rich. Like, they were going to
Yes.
financially ruin Margo
A
to take
teenager.
yeah, because she's just not capable of doing it. And then Marco makes a really good point. It was like, oh, I'm too young to raise a kid, but you were willing to
Not too young
fuck
to be
me.
preyed on. Yeah.
Which is like, I just don't feel, which is so weird. I just don't feel, despite us having reviewed so many of these books, like the grooming aspect of this was very, very relevant. And I don't know why. Like, it just kind of feels like it was, okay, it's bad. Now Margot's coming up with solutions. It felt very like individualistic rather than
Mm.
holistically looking at society, you know? Like, it's just like she's one agent and she's willing to do it. And that's kind of the essence of liberal feminism, is, right? It's all
Yeah.
very like the individual and what the individual can do to enrich themselves, and like, oh, meritocracy, I'm gonna go do sex work. And it's like she had real world like repercussions, like being doxxed. That is
Yeah.
terrifying. That is, it threatens the security of you and your child. And I don't know, it's just, even in the end, like, what if we make security services to shield from doxing? But you, like, it's hard, like that's not really a thing. Like, you can like sign up for those services to like wipe your identity off of the internet, like your addresses, but you have to do them every year. You have to
Yeah.
pay to have it done every year. And I think that's terrible, because these websites, like whether you have like memberships with like HBO or Amazon or whatever, that your data is being sold. That's how it's out
Yes.
there. Is getting sold to like those like
And it's
um
through these
I can't
big
remember what it's called.
corporations.
The like the Find My Person or whatever websites.
Yeah,
Like,
I
they're the
know.
ones that are buying it. It's
Yeah,
all
but
shitty.
and it's like apps like Facebook and Instagram and now TikTok especially. These are like the sites that are also like stealing your information and spreading it around too. And it's really weird that she acts like the author acts like it's just like the actions of these individuals are why this happens too, rather than talking about like the systematic issue of because of capitalism. Like in capitalism, our data is worth the most to these companies so they can know how to prey on our interests so specifically. You know?
The only passing mention we even get is like the passing of Sesta Fosta. That was kind of it. Like, they don't really get into like surveillance capitalism and like the broader ways of like, what is it called, like a digital imperialism, or just like the general like platform capitalism, I think is what the author who also wrote the Accelerationist Manifesto called it. Like, the way that the internet functions, like there's no fixation on that. I was like, there's no, like, the reason that like OnlyFans or Depop or like those types of websites like pop up is a direct reaction to the material conditions that are being produced by late stage capitalism, like these side hustles that are turning into
Yes.
full-time jobs, that which people don't necessarily view as being ethical. Like, it's a direct symptom of the economics. And there's just nothing about the internet on this, and I wish there was more, especially since like you can't have a link tree with OnlyFans in it on TikTok. This came out in
No.
2024. You couldn't do that in 2021. I know, because I got in trouble
Yeah.
for it. So I don't know where her research is. Like, oh, we're gonna have it linked. Even on Instagram now, I don't think you can
Yeah.
have anything linked in that way. You have to be really careful with how it's linked. They're like, oh, we'll just do it with link trees. It's uh, like you'd have
That
to have
was
several
I think
jumping.
well that's the thing though is that I think this book specifically does take place in 2019 though. So I guess the idea is that it was before like TikTok ended up being more restrictive on that because there was a time where you could have like the link tree actually work in that way, which is what I would imagine. And it's really interesting too because like the author does explicitly say capitalism a couple times
Yes,
in
a
this
couple of
too.
times, and then there was like the one at the very end where JB is talking about how he got like the runs candies out of these quarter machines. He's like, from the dark, fertile soil of American capitalism. But this is also what follows the whole like, we're gonna become pimps and like have we're gonna become the most awesome ethical kick-ass pimps of all time. Yeah, I love an ethical boss, an ethical
Yeah.
exploit. That doesn't work. It's
It
not
did.
real. You're lying to
So,
yourself.
if you had to recommend books, nonfiction works to this author, if she were able to like rewrite Margo to be more worker centered, more accessible to an actual like liberator person that wants liberation, what would you recommend? What books?
The first one on would be enemy feminisms. I think that's a really solid point. Obviously, like starting with women, race, and class is good, but I think enemy feminisms, because it's so topical and it's talking about so many different like feminist movements that people are going to know and recognize, I think is a really great jumping off point. I think if you were interested in learning about sex work, you can't go wrong with learning about like revolting prostitutes, which is a like Marxist centered analysis of the whole sex trade industry, mainly focusing on prostitution as like the street walking type thing. And then there's also Playing the Whore by Mia Grant. That was a really good one. And I think it talked, I read that years and years ago about like the international aspect of it. Then there's
Mm-hmm.
also a short history of trans misogyny, because I thought that this book was missing trans misogyny, because that is a really integral part of the sex industry, is where trans
Mm-hmm.
women fit in. And like it's just centered around a white woman, and I thought that was very cheap and
Yeah.
lazy, and I there was really no queerness, and it would be a disservice to not talk about the interconnecting nature of like race and sex and gender and like all of those, like the sex industry is where we all go. That's why you can't leave that whole aspect out when we have a
Mm-hmm.
revolution, because it won't come into fruition. And Revolting Prostitutes does a really good job of discussing that, and she's got an MFA. She can, I know she's capable of reading these things.
Yeah.
Rufi, I'll DM you. Please read these. You need them. And then
Which I mean,
rewrite the
like,
book.
yeah. Which that's one thing that's so frustrating because I feel like reading this early on, it kind of does have lot of promise. And I know, like, as Marxists, like, we have such like a niche perspective on it too. So like even reading this, I wasn't expecting it to be like, and then Marx said to fight for our own liberation, like anything like that. But I kind of was expecting more. But that's such the problem. Like it's so liberal feminist. Like this book is like I see why this is so popular and why it's getting or an Apple TV adaptation because it is so, especially under like Trump's America specifically, because of the way that like liberals are like viewing the world as if this is only because like Republicans are in power, not because the Democrats are in power. This is they Rufi Thrope, sorry, you're one of them ladies that's holding up the sign that's like if Kamala won, we'd be at brunch. Like this is
Yeah.
that's the vibe of the book, which is frustrating because I do feel like it does have so many positives of it. It's just it's no Marxist text.
No, it's like it's good that we read these to kind of get an idea, but also, being a Marxist means that I can't fully enjoy books the
Yeah,
way I wish I could. Um,
there's no
People
brain
would be like,
off reads.
"You're using purity politics," but it's like, no, I'm just a principled Marxist feminist. I care about liberation, and like there is definite faults, despite how much I did enjoy this and relate to it. I don't see
Yeah,
what's wrong with critiquing things. That's kind of like the point
the
of
whole point of
reading
art.
and being literate, is like
Yeah.
critically analyzing with the text that you're reading. People should be doing this. You should be thinking about this. But I feel like people are going to see this and they're like, gaslight, gatekeep, girl boss. But I'm like, gaslight, gatekeep, gulag.
But I mean, that's the one thing. And the thing is the reason why we're more critical too of this than we are of other novels is because like it's so obvious that like even like liberal feminists realize like the exploitation that women specifically face in America and under like this capitalist society. But instead of wanting solidarity, they just want themselves to be the exploiter.
I think that's what was so refreshing about like Love of Worker Bees, like despite like the horrorphobic aspects of it, because Kalandi was very conservative. It was written in like the 1920s, is that the solutions from the main character were very like, how can I uplift my community and the people around me? Whereas this is
Mm-hmm.
just like, I'm
How
gonna
can I
be
push my
that girl. I
individualistic
can do
self
this.
forward? Yeah.
It's like, okay, you pulled yourself by your bootstraps.
Yeah, and that's one thing too. Like, I think it does like talk about like how hard it is to grow on these different social medias, and it's getting harder and harder every year too because of the way that like these social media apps change and the way that they don't want people. They're losing workers, boots on the ground workers. The capitalists are, and so by like creating like monetization issues with like TikTok where there's so many creators that'll be first off whenever like the acquisition happened there's so many people worried about if they were going to be able to still make their living off of TikTok like so many influencers do, And then also, not to mention the way that TikTok will, you see it all the time. So many creators are like, I just got kicked out of the creator program virtually randomly, and even just like
Yeah.
what happened to you online. It's all, that's something that I feel like definitely could have been discussed more too. And I think Margo's relationship with her mother too was done relatively poorly. It was strong in the beginning, but then it's just like, I forgive you for being evil and calling CPS on me, Mom. Thanks.
Yeah, and then she's like, I'm gonna live with my absentee father, which I thought that was nice. I thought they had like a really good growth. I just
Yes.
thought maybe with the mom, there would have been something, but it was kind of like the mom was the
Which
enemy. And
feels,
I don't
I
really
can't prove
icky. I
it, but
didn't
it
like it.
feels anti-feminist. Like, to have such a great relationship with the father but not the mother.
That's a little sus.
Don't you think? Internal biases. I mean, again, this isn't a horrible book. I mean, Mariah and I liked it. I will be watching the adaptation with my partner because I think he would like it. The book was funny. I didn't expect it to be so silly goofy either.
Yeah, the humor in it was very like refreshing. I liked
It's
it.
very modern,
It's
like Gen Z.
frustrating because there's so many parts of this that I did enjoy thoroughly, and then there's other parts that I was just like, fuck. God damn it! I can't have any fun. No joy, no happiness
Yeah.
for me.
Well, I don't know if there's really anything else that we need to say. Is there any points you want to touch on that we didn't touch on?
I don't think so. I think that was kind of the majority of it. Like we kind of got into all the main point. Like we both finished this today.
Today.
So
Yeah.
this is pretty fresh. The show doesn't come out for
Usually I
like
finish it
2-ish weeks. A little bit less
It'll
than
be
2
already
weeks.
out, I think, by the time we post this.
What's up next for the podcast? We
Or maybe
have an
not.
episode, a book talk that's going to come out. We're going to talk about Shy Girl and AI in books.
allegations.
And then if you'd like to read along with the book club, you might still have time. We're reading You Weren't Meant to Be Human by Andrew Joseph White. So if you'd like to read that, we're reading an autistic author for Autism Awareness Month. Now you're aware.
Yeah, if you weren't before, those will be linked below. Don't forget to like and subscribe or follow whatever app you are on. Rate the podcast. If you're on one of those, they'll let you rate it. But comment below if there's any specific books you want us to read. If you like us doing, this is the year of adaptations, it seems like, because like with the way that Book Talk has been gaining popularity and stuff, I've noticed there's so many adaptations coming out. Mariah and I have so many books that either are on our TBR or that we've read before that are getting adapted. So we've been kind of trying to focus on adaptations. If you guys like the adaptation angle, we'll keep it going. If there's any specific ones you want us to read, comment below. We will definitely read it. Usually. Unless it's dog. But Mariah can read anything, so.
It's true. It's true. My brain is just works different.
But other than that, thank you and good night.